my kind of advice to anyone looking to join Microsoft as a product manager is that you have to make sure you are differentiating yourself within your resume.
Thank you,
Um,
Jeremy, for your time today. Really appreciate it. Would you please tell me a little bit about yourself?
yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me. So, my name is Jeremy Robinson. I'm born and raised in Stone Mountain, Georgia. I attended Albany State University in South Georgia, which is a historically Black college and university. And so, I have two kids, I have a wife, currently work at Microsoft. And before that, I spent some time at Amazon and, just very excited to sit down and have this chat with you today.
So it says here you've been with Microsoft for about a year and 2 months. Can you tell me a little bit about, what was your first reaction when you got that job offer? Like your phone call from the recruiter or the email or whatever that was?
Yeah, absolutely. So funny enough, I actually wanted to, join Microsoft for some time. I think I never quite found the right role. So,
Mm.
when I did have the recruiter reach out to me and learn more about the role in the space, it was a space that I was excited about because it was something that I hadn't done in my experience. So, or really like a muscle I hadn't got a chance to flex, so to speak. So the recruiter was awesome. He was amazing, great communication, great prep. And so getting that feedback from him, the all inclined or the higher vote, and then the offer, not only was it a bit surreal, but absolutely full circle. When I tell people, or if I'm helping someone regarding professional development, I tell them that there are happy mistakes, but you can always help them along just by, making a plan and trying to execute on that plan. So it was extremely gratifying just to kind of see the full circle of setting this goal,
Yeah.
doing the prep work, and then ultimately getting the offer.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can totally relate to that. Tell me about the process. Like, you actually, it seems like you may have actually applied a few times to Microsoft, and you ultimately got it. So like, can you tell me the process a little bit? Did you have a referral? And if you did, how did that work? And then also, like, how did the interview process go? And like, how long did the whole thing take you from actual applying to getting the job offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I actually worked, in Amazon. I'm sorry, I worked in Seattle when I was with Amazon from 2016 to 2018. So it
Mm,
was kind of around that time that I wanted to get back to Atlanta more than
mm,
staying in Seattle, actually. And so, when I understood the roles that Microsoft had in Atlanta at that time, that's when I started making this plan that I need to kind of make sure that I could fit within the data center roles, the software development roles, the TPM roles, the product manager roles, the cloud enterprise roles. And that's kind of how I mapped the next few years to kind of get those skills, because I figured that's why I wasn't getting
mhm,
any responses on applications
mm,
prior to that time, right? So as I mentioned, it was actually the recruiter that reached out to me for this particular role. And what happened was I just updated my LinkedIn search preferences to say I'm now
mhm.
open to these certain things.
Yep.
And so, when the recruiter reached out, gave me the rundown on basically the team that he recruited for, the roles he was looking to recruit in, and specifically the dynamic of the role. And Microsoft is, very notorious for this nuance of calling a lot of different disciplines program managers, even if you may be more technical in your nature or more product in your nature, they would just lump everyone together, call them program managers. So once I got a good understanding of what the scope of the role was, kind of the domain space within the org. First steps, I believe, was a call with the manager initially, the hiring
Mm,
manager initially. I think the call went well. It was just him getting a feel for my experience, um, if I would be aligned with what the scope of the role would be in that specific product space. And moving past that, there was a tech screen. The tech
mm,
screen was I wouldn't say it was like full on kind of like your TPM systems design interview, but it was a bit of that kind of, walk me through how you
mhm,
build out an application to play music or
mhm,
to store files or
mhm,
something like that. But it wasn't as deep as maybe I would have expected, but that was kind of how the tech round went. It was really to gauge my aptitude of, do I understand enough about how changes in, either, inputs or changes in customer preferences within the product space itself, how it could possibly impact the architecture, the tech stack, other things within, the system itself. After that, I got cleared for the on-site or the loop, and
Hmm.
it was three people on the loop. They were all principal PM group managers. And so I had a really, really great time in discussions with, in the interviews. What I like about Microsoft's interview process, and I can't say this is across the board, but really within my experience, what I really enjoyed was it was truly just conversations. It was,
Mm.
first understanding about my experience and then digging into my experience, talking through scenarios. It didn't feel like I was being grilled. It didn't feel like I was being shotgunned all these different questions, which is how a lot of other interview experiences can go. So I really enjoyed that. It gave me, it calmed my nerves a little going into it. Obviously, once you get the first one out of the way and you say, oh, that was kind of smooth, it wasn't too bad,
Yeah.
right? So got the feedback that it was all incline, all higher decisions. And
Mm.
so after that, I needed to have the AA. I don't remember if it's like as appropriate or what exactly the AA acronym means, but basically it's kind of, Microsoft at certain levels. This was a level 64 senior program manager position. At certain levels, I believe, you have an AA interview. And so the AA was with
Okay.
the group partner manager.
Huh.
I think it would be like the equivalent of the director.
Gotcha.
And you know, the conversations weren't too much about my experience, but more so, I think, about me. What's
Mm.
important to me? What am I passionate about?
Okay.
What's important to me as far as like what drives me in my career? What is professionally gratifying for me?
Uh-huh.
Different things like that. Um, I kind of I kind of think of it as a bit of like a culture fit or a team fit
Okay.
kind of interview. And similar to the loop or the on-site,
Yeah.
very calming, just having really good conversations and really enjoyed that.
That's super interesting. So the AA interview or AA chat, was that after you got an like offer letter or
No, so great question. Yeah. So after I get the, on hire decisions, after finishing the on-site, there's no offer, no verbal,
oh
no
yeah, yeah.
anything. It's just that I think I remember how the recruiter framed it to me. So I'll paraphrase. It's basically, we know that we'd have a place for you at Microsoft, but the AA is just to make sure that there was no fluke, that truly
Gotcha.
you would be not only a good fit at Microsoft, but also a good fit within the role that you are being
Gotcha.
recruited into. So
Okay.
I believe it's kind of like how you hear about other companies. You pass the interview, but now we got to make sure we have a good team for you, right?
Okay. That's that's
Yeah.
that's super interesting.
Got the feedback from the recruiter, good chat with the AAs, no red flags, want to continue to move forward. But at this point, the hiring manager that was already like kind of matched with or had been interviewing with, he ended up going with an internal candidate. And so this same AA, she pulled in someone else, another, principal PM group manager from the org kind of within her reporting structure that also had open recs. And so again, since I was already inclined, it was more so just conversations about team fit and really would it be gratifying to do this work. And so I believe initially the role I was interviewing for was kind of like enterprise, kind of like software dev best practice kind of deal. So I believe like if you think about deployment pipeline and kind of the developer experience within Azure, it was kind of like in that realm. And
Mm.
so when I pivoted to the other hiring manager, this was more in a CRM kind of 3P CRM space with ServiceNow. And so I had one meeting with the new hiring manager, and it was really again just, hey, so I understand you've already been inclined, but want to show you this is the space that I'd like to bring you in for. Tell me what you know about this space, and this would be the dynamic. And I asked a series of questions regarding leadership style,
Hmm.
team dynamics, opportunities for growth, other things like that. So it was only after this, chat where we both agreed, like, yes, we'd like to move forward. That got some got some verbal numbers from the recruiter.
Yeah.
Did some back and forth. I was interviewing with some other companies at the time, but did
Sure.
some back and forth and landed on numbers that we felt were competitive both for me and fit within Microsoft's budget. So as you mentioned earlier, very very ecstatic and elated to get that offer and see the compensation at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. How long did the whole thing take?
Yeah, so I think I'm very fortunate, very blessed. I think it probably moved faster than it does for most. I want to say I had an offer by sometime mid-March, and the recruiter probably first reached out to me end of Jan or early Feb. It may
Oh
have actually
wow.
been early Feb. Yeah, it was in hindsight, looking back, and
Yeah.
when I would talk to other people about my experience and trying to give them some
Yeah.
insight as to how their experience could look, is how I realized that I maybe had a unicorn experience because of that timeline, having that turnaround so quick. So yeah, it wasn't too drawn out as some of the horror stories I've heard from other people.
Would you please tell me a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned a little earlier about how Microsoft's notorious for this program manager distinction. So in our org, it became effective, I think, at the end of Q1 this year, actually, that they split off because it is a tech org, but they split off the designation to let you now actually align to the product management discipline or
Hmm.
technical program management discipline. So now my full team, we're now recognized as product managers. So
Hmm.
what I'm responsible for is I'm responsible for the end user experience for, essentially all Microsoft employees,
Mm.
that engage with our IT support, platform. And so I mentioned earlier that, basically it was a CRM space.
Hmm.
So we have a third party kind of, CRM that we embedded within the Microsoft ecosystem. And so what I'm responsible for is kind of development on top of this platform that enriches the end user experience. And so one of the main products that I own, you can think of it as kind of a, super powered chatbot. It's
Hmm.
a AI powered machine learning,
Oh.
natural language understanding chatbot
Hmm.
that just seeks to, bring self-help, self-resolution, and really automate your experience for all your support, your IT support engagement
Hmm.
needs. So that's the main kind of product that I own within the platform, and I have a few others that are more. I think they're lighter in their functionality than the virtual agent or the chatbot kind of. And we have some published stories actually with ServiceNow, some case studies regarding kind of some of the work that we did as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's super cool. So you work closely with the tech team to kind of build that stuff out and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work in semester planning basically. So every 6 months is
Uh-huh.
kind of a semester planning, and then
Hmm.
when we as the product managers, when we work with our customers, our stakeholders, we gather insights. We kind of do research to understand what are market trends, what's on the horizon. You know, just making sure we're really offering the best for our customers when you think of their user experience. And so from this discovery exercise, we come up with, or I'll just say I come up with for my product space, hey, these are the set of capabilities that we want to target for the next 6-month semester. And so we have customers on the platform, we have stakeholders, and so at that point it's more so a diplomatic exercise of like, okay, these are, what I think are priorities, where do you see priorities, where are their dependencies? And so once we land on that list of targeted
Hmm.
feature capabilities for the semester, then we partner with engineering team to say, okay,
Gotcha.
this is what we want to be able to target, but what's realistic within the capacity that we have for the semester. And
Hmm.
so through this exercise, they'll map out through, the sprints that fit within that 6-month time, backing out a little bit of overage, kind of a buffer for anything that we weren't able to fully commit or fully deliver within that period. And then, through the semester, obviously just partnering with the engineering team on removing any barriers, on any additional discovery around capabilities and trade-offs within even the implementation for certain feature capabilities, with respect to impact on the user experience.
Gotcha. Okay. That's super cool. Did
Um,
you have any learning curve?
Yeah, absolutely. So two things. While familiar with CRM platforms, I wasn't explicitly familiar with ServiceNow as a,
Mhm.
service provider. So I'd say that was the first thing. But I'm sure probably as most professionals can attest, you make your, you earn your keep not by necessarily being a SME in one thing, but having the ability to be dynamic and to learn and to adapt. So, nothing that I haven't done before in regards to coming into unfamiliar territory and having to ramp up. So kind of how I did that was I was in a team of SMEs, and I mean, the tribal knowledge will always be maybe one of the best assets, although it's not a good practice.
Hmm.
But that's always going to be one of your best assets. So identifying who these SMEs were that I could kind
Hmm.
of leverage, quick ramp up and knowledge transfer within that space. Also, ServiceNow as a platform, they do have their own knowledge repository and kind of learning uh, learning kind of, I guess, space within the platform. So
Hmm.
going through that as well. But I think where I really kind of, cut my teeth, so to speak, within learning more about my product space was, the second kind of pillar of like learning or
Hmm.
ramping up was I was not, I didn't have as much depth as what was needed within machine learning and AI
Hmm.
capabilities and
Hmm.
natural language understanding to really hit the ground running. So that was another area that I had to ramp up very quickly. And so, I needed to understand what does the model look like, or what do the models look like. And I came
Hmm.
to find out later that, and within the models, there's a series of topics. There's other things that you train on top of just the model itself, asynchronous training, and other things like that. So all of that was ramping up for me. It was not just learning about the platform, but it was more fundamentally
Hmm.
more like industry knowledge, like what are we using, AI for within the IT service management space now? What are we using it for now? If we have problems with data consistency, or if we have problems with data quality, how do we foster better data to train our models and other things like that? So those are probably the two pillars of
Hmm.
ramping up that I probably had to tackle first. And then an honorable mention is probably just the working dynamic of Microsoft. Um, I'm probably not the first to say this, but going from 5 years in Amazon to Microsoft, completely different culture,
Okay.
completely different working environment, a lot more collaborative, a lot more interdependent in the way that you have to foster relationships
Uh-huh.
sometimes, and maybe even sometimes more than just focusing on getting the thing done.
Yeah.
So that was the honorable mention kind of learning curve for me, is
Okay.
it can't just be about getting things done. It's also the manner of
Uh-huh.
which the relationships and the partnership.
Gotcha. No, that makes total sense. Um, what do you like the most and what do you like the least about your role?
Uh, Good question. I think what I like the most about my role is that the space I have to truly be customer obsessed, the space that I
Mm.
have to be autonomous, not necessarily in what I do, but autonomous in the manner that I try to dig out these insights from our customers. We have a customer on the platform that, or you may have a customer or a series of customers that you consider to be your largest tenants,
Mm.
or the largest kind of user base. And so you would think these are my largest tenants. I'll always have the biggest blast radius if I focus on what they need first. But that isn't necessarily always the most customer obsessed thing to do. It's just to go with what I know has you know, the the path of least resistance, right? So, within this row, I do like that I'm also able to say, well, this group that represents 11% of distribution within the chatbot usage, I want to have some conversations with them. I want to understand how their adoption is coming along. I want to understand how they're doing with making sure that their users and their customers are getting the most out of our platform. I really like that, and I really enjoy that because it does make me autonomous, and it makes me
Hmm.
truly an owner in
Yeah.
ensuring that I'm driving the most for our customers when you think about the user experience. And what I like the least, I think, is we don't always have bias for action. And I hate to
Mm.
use that Amazon LP. I really do hate to use that, but we don't always have bias for action. And I guess you know uh, there's certain things that if it's glaringly obvious for the customers, then it's kind of like a just do it. Um, and to be fair, no, you should never blindly do anything. but in some regards, pulling 15 hypothetical scenarios and what if this happens and everything else, while it could be value add to go down that rabbit hole. um, I've taken first training a couple times, and so one thing that they taught us, I'll use this scenario to kind of wrap up this. What I don't like is that when you're doing like trauma, if you're treating a trauma victim or something
Mhm.
like that, um, when you're checking them, you're just checking for whatever's bleeding the most first. So if
Mhm.
there's a, gunshot wound to the stomach or something, and you see the blood gushing, you'll treat that first. You
Yes.
don't know if there's internal bleeding. You don't know if there's bones broken even yet. You haven't got there. The first thing you saw was what was glaringly obvious. You wouldn't go past the bleeding stomach to
Mhm.
say, well, let me make sure, the elbow isn't
Mhm,
broken. Is
mhm,
the
mhm.
shoulder dislocated? Let me, it's certain things where I kind of feel like we could do better for our customers if we get a little bit more
Bias
uh,
fraction.
bias fraction. I don't want to use that, but yeah. So ultimately, though, we do still, even if we get there, even if it takes longer to get there, I
Of
know we
course.
still do deliver the best for our customers. But
Yeah.
that's what I would think is the biggest opportunity, is just to trust our instincts a little more and
Mhm.
have more resolve to just do it.
Yeah. 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 No, I think just do it actually sounds better than bias fraction. Okay. Yeah, you clearly stayed at Amazon too long. Uh, one, my last question is advice for those who want to join Microsoft as a product manager.
Yeah. So I don't I hope this is right to say, and I'm just being objective. Um, I think that Microsoft's recruiting practices are I don't think they keep up with the times always,
Mm,
and all I mean by that is that I think that Microsoft is always looking for, I think, in my experience, in my opinion, I think Microsoft recruiters, they look, for checking boxes.
mm,
Does the candidate have do they meet the
qualifications.
the qualification for years of experience? Do they have, the MBA? Do they, and again, that's not wrong, but I don't think that should always be
Hmm.
your guiding principle.
Hmm.
So my feedback or my kind of advice to anyone looking to join Microsoft as a product manager is that you absolutely have to make sure you are differentiating yourself within your resume. I didn't say this earlier, but I mentioned that I started applying to Microsoft, I think around like 2017 or early 2018. Um, would never hear back, not a phone screen, not a recruiter asking me anything. And so and I don't think there's anything special about me per se, but I just think that within the process, you have to make sure you're standing out. Microsoft's very competitive. Microsoft is very competitive to get into, um, and because for various reasons they take great care of their employees. There's still prestige around what Microsoft does in
Yeah.
industry, so you have to stand out. If if everyone else that's applying all has MBAs from top schools, they all have the same companies on their background, all that means is that that continues to raise the bar to make it more competitive.
Mhm.
um, Consider adding, if you do diversity work outside of your professional job, consider adding, if you do anything philanthropic. Maybe if you're an engineer, I'm sorry, we're talking about product managers, maybe you helped local church, or maybe you volunteered at a library to help them on a rebranding exercise for community engagement, right?
Mhm.
These are just examples, but when I think about what you could do to make yourself stand out, the first thing is you'd have to just catch someone's eye. You'd have to catch the recruiter's eye. Now, the no-brainer here is obviously leverage your network to
Mm,
the most. Leverage your network, leverage LinkedIn, leverage LinkedIn search capabilities to try to find recruiters, to try to find hiring managers. There's a lot more transparency and visibility into hiring managers advertising that I'm hiring product managers.
mhm.
Please ping me. I'm hiring. So be very active on LinkedIn. And then the other kind of last, maybe no brainer, is about leveraging your network for referrals. That,
Mm.
that that's another one that I think would be really big to help if you're a product manager looking to get into
Yeah.
Microsoft, you have to pull out all the stops.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And yeah, like I clearly always tell people to, network and get that stuff before you actually apply for anything on any job actually. But yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Hey, Jeremy, that was all for today. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. Really, really, really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you for having me.